The final boss is at it again as The Rock took to Twitter this week to hype up what's going to happen at Elimination Chamber following that very interesting appearance last week on SmackDown, as you guys noted in the comments, as we talked about on a previous video, with The Rock coming back and wanting to take Cody Rhodes' soul. I mentioned the reasons why I think that could be the case, with The Rock really leaning into this final boss character and the idea that it's all about power, right? He's the new sort of corporate face of things, at least the way they're playing it up right now. And maybe that's going to tie into him having his own corporate champion to kind of trace back to The Rock doing the same thing all the way back in 1998. But where do they go from here? That continues to be the question. It's a question that we're still asking ourselves this many days removed from SmackDown last week. Cody tried to explain things a little bit further on Raw on Monday night, and you had, I thought, a very interesting exchange between him and Seth Rollins, with Rollins bringing up some good points about Cody, and also Cody bringing up some good points about Rollins, how he was sort of the former chosen one for Triple H and company in the Authority era and all that. So where do we go from here? Is this something that we feel like has been in the works for a while now, or was this just something new thrown in when The Rock decided to make his return? I think we all probably know the answer to that question. And now we've got to figure out, do they have a fully set plan now from where they're going to go from here going into WrestleMania 41 and beyond? Well, what's going to happen on Saturday is going to determine a lot of that, right? And like I said, The Rock did take to Twitter on Wednesday to hype up his next appearance. Will take place at Elimination Chamber. He will be in Toronto on Saturday to seemingly, get the whatever answer is from Cody Rhodes. Is Cody going to say, sure, Rock, I'm going to reach in to my chest, pick out my soul, and give it to you right here in the middle of the ring? It'd be one of the wildest things we've ever seen, for someone to literally reach in, grab their soul, and give it to someone else in the middle of a wrestling ring. But if that's not the case, and Cody turns him down, what does that mean? What's going to happen from there? Well, that's what The Rock's teasing when we talk about the way the final boss, unlike any other, is going to hype things up, right? Here's what Dwayne The Rock Johnson had to say on Twitter/X this week. He said, "Thanks for watching the show. We got some disruptive moves coming. So tune in. Disruptive moves is the quote there. Love playing this audacious, unpredictable character known as the final boss. Toronto, I'll see you this weekend at Elimination Chamber." I just think it's funny where you just got to bring it up. Hey, we all know this is a character, right? But it is kind of also interesting, I think, for him to say disruptive moves, right? Because that's what we really look at here and wonder. What is he teasing? What is it that they are really going to try to achieve coming out of this Elimination Chamber appearance? And I think that's where, again, we go back to what the expectations were going into this particular show. Before we knew The Rock was going to be thrown back into things, and maybe before WWE itself even knew that The Rock was going to be thrown back into things, we seemed like we were heading towards the obvious collision course between Cody Rhodes and John Cena for WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas, based on the fact of how the Royal Rumble ended. Jey Uso is the surprise winner, but it's not just that. It's the way WWE zooms in on John Cena's face when he gets pushed off the apron, and it's Cena in that moment realizing his opportunity to get that world record championship may have just gone away, right? But now, afterwards, he declares he's going to be in the Elimination Chamber, and he is going to win it to have, knowing this is the last chance. He has no other opportunities to get to that world title championship match at his last ever WrestleMania. So, knowing that was still the setup, right? How does The Rock change this thing? And what could he mean by disruptive moves that could happen at Elimination Chamber that is going to lead us in that direction of, again, what I still think is going to be Cody Rhodes versus John Cena, but you just don't know now because of what The Rock's insertion into this whole thing has done to perhaps their plans before. Is this where, like we've said many times, I brought it up in the video last week, you've seen some of these heel tendencies from others. They've really tried to play into, Cody having to carry the weight of being the WWE champion right now. And will that be something that eventually turns Cody to the dark side? That's this whole story they're playing up. Everyone's brought up the Cody heel turn and all that. I've said, that's not going to happen just yet. Like, maybe down the road that's going to happen, but turning Cody Rhodes heel and having him just simply grab his soul and give it to The Rock is not going to be what happens. We all know that at Elimination Chamber. So we have to then figure out, okay, if we're going to use the word disruptive, or we know The Rock likes to use kind of, all this fun language to really hype things up. But let's go with that for a second, because something has to happen, right? It can't just be Rock walks in the ring, Cody sits there and says, all right, you know what, Mr. Dwayne Johnson, I am going to keep my soul. Thank you very much. Cody leaves, and that's how we end the show. It has to be more than that, right? And so, from that perspective, we are then looking at the most obvious choices as to who's going to win this match. And we may do our usual predictions video and I'll give you my official opinion on that. But for now, we all know it's pretty clear here. If you're setting up the match for Cody, there's only one of two choices here that this whole thing is going to play out with. But there could be a third, I think, that maybe we're not giving enough credit to, although I think it's unlikely. We mentioned the John Cena angle, right? Wouldn't it be something if you eventually get that John Cena, not full-on heel turn, but it is putting that storytelling in where John Cena is in his final WrestleMania, his final chance at the championship perhaps, and this is where the desperation comes in. He wants to break that record. This is the thing that's going to define his legacy. And so, to do that, is he going to go the one place he has not been willing to go, for all those years, right? As much as the fans wanted to see it, we were never getting that turn from John Cena where he turned his back on the fans. But is the defining of his legacy by winning this 17th World Heavyweight Championship, is that going to be something where he's like, I have to take that way out? It just seems like that's something they can dangle in front of us and really play with the idea, right? But it's also, John Cena's the, don't give up, the hustle, loyalty, respect, all this other stuff. Are they going to mess with that in the final farewell tour for John Cena in 2025 when they want this to be a moment where he's getting cheered every single time he walks into the arena throughout the year? Are they really going to mess with that and kind of, go that dynamic where we think John Cena is going to all of a sudden turn heel and you're going to have a John Cena heel versus Cody Rhodes, babyface at WrestleMania 41? I don't think it's that simple either. But again, they can dangle that in front of us because it is a fascinating thing to think about. If John Cena is willing to go to that place where he is going to align himself with The Rock, be the corporate champion for The Rock. Doesn't really fit John Cena, if you really think about it. Well, then we go back to the CM Punk thing, right? We've talked about it, talking about the tying in the favor and all this other stuff with Paul Heyman. How does that maybe come into play here? We figured it was going to come into play at WrestleMania somehow, some way. And I thought, Punk's exchange with Logan Paul on Monday Night on Raw, where Punk's saying the words like, I am Satan himself, and Punk's bringing up, he's going to walk out of WrestleMania with the World Championship. He's going to main event WrestleMania. We've heard him say that before, right? But it hits a little bit different now when you think about how that could tie into maybe Punk, in a very ironic twist, being the one that absolutely is willing to sell his soul to The Rock to get, again, John Cena. The 17th world title has been eluding him. For Punk, it's that WrestleMania main event and the championship since his return. Is he willing to go that far? And so you can see we're adding in these questions for these two in particular where these are great stories that you can tell, right? Even with all this madness and confusion that we got last week on SmackDown with The Rock being thrown back into this and feeling like it just came out of nowhere to have this be the next step in the Rock versus Cody type journey when we saw what happened on the Raw and Netflix thing. They sort of had completely dropped everything, it felt like, and all that. So having Punk turn to the dark side, to me, he's the best candidate of that, of the group of choices here, just because it is something where we know kind of with CM Punk, there are those things, and I said it even going back to last year, right? I'm like, you could absolutely see a scenario where they're playing up heel Punk versus Cody, last year at this time. And it's kind of one of these things now, when you add this into it, sure, like, wouldn't it be ironic if The Rock, who, as we've said, has sort of, stolen CM Punk's WrestleMania main event before, is Punk willing to, kind of forgive that here? And maybe not. Maybe it's like, for the time being, Punk's going to get his from The Rock here, and then eventually it's like, all right, well, Punk just turned on The Rock so he get what he wanted, but now he's going to turn on him again, or Punk's going to accept The Rock's, sort of potential favors here, and then he's going to eventually turn on him, right? So these are ways you can play around with this. And then I think the other thing you have to consider is the Drew McIntyre aspect. We've said it. Of all the people in the Chamber match, I don't see a scenario where Logan Paul is winning. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. If that happens, you think some of the meltdowns we've had online here recently, it's going to become nothing to if Logan Paul wins this match. Damian Priest is not winning this match. Seth Rollins, I think, feels like the odd man out just because you would expect Roman Reigns to somehow play into this, right? If you're going to get to a Reigns versus Rollins or a Reigns versus Rollins versus Punk match, you would think that Roman Reigns has to be involved here somehow, even though The Rock's going to be in the building. All the heavy hitters are going to be there, right? So Drew McIntyre, to me, is the only other option here that you can sort of tie into the history with The Rock. We talked about that on the previous video. And the more I think about it, I'm like, Drew's coming for Cody. We already know that. But is that your WrestleMania 41, night 2 main event? When we mentioned all the reports out there about maybe it's going to be as simple as Drew versus Damian Priest or Drew being tied in with LA Knight and all these things. It may feel underwhelming to some people, but I don't know that the next step necessarily is Cody versus Drew McIntyre, because now that they've done, the transfer window and all that, Cody versus McIntyre is something you can get to in the summer, right? Like, that is a big match you can build towards. And maybe McIntyre is the person that eventually takes the title off Cody, and maybe he is the chosen one, right? As we said, from The Rock, he becomes the corporate sort of champion. Because if there is someone who would absolutely sell his soul to the devil himself, it probably would be Drew McIntyre right now, because that's how much he wants this opportunity to ruin everything for CM Punk and Cody Rhodes and John Cena and all these other people, right? So that story makes sense too. So when Rock talks about disrupting things at Elimination Chamber, the disruption is not going to be simply Cody selling his soul to The Rock. It's going to be something else. And maybe it's not as clear in Toronto on Saturday what that is going to be. But you feel like something has to happen. Something huge has to take place at Elimination Chamber when that Elimination Chamber match is over. Or during the match itself, right? Could The Rock play a role in the match itself? These are all things that could play out. But they have to do something big here. Because again, you've sort of, as we said, reset the audience's expectations as to what's next. And we talked about all the stuff about Rock saying, well, the thing with Cody doesn't have to culminate in a match. Remember, The Rock pinned Cody Rhodes last year at WrestleMania 40 on night 1. He pinned the guy who became the champion. And you're telling me they're never going to get to that match. It sounds great in theory, but you're leading a lot of people in the direction to think that this is the match you're going to do maybe this year or maybe sometime in the summer or whenever, right? That's still a match that they're teasing with everything they're doing. But do we think it's actually going to be Cody versus The Rock? Because again, what does that mean for the winner of the Elimination Chamber? And I've seen all the theories, well, Rock's going to insert himself into it or whatever. I don't see that being the case. So if you're teasing a match that's never going to happen, that sort of defeats the purpose unless you have something huge in mind when it comes to how they're going to play this up with a potential John Cena, CM Punk, maybe Drew McIntyre down the road. But what's it going to be, guys? That's the question when it comes to perhaps these disruptive moves that The Rock's going to make on Saturday at Elimination Chamber. And Cody will be there. He's kind of turned him down, right? I mean, it's going to be as simple as Cody saying, yes, here you go. I don't see that happening. What's it going to be? What's the turn? You've had more time to think about this. We've all had more time to think about this. Again, we had the segment on Raw this past week with Cody, with CM Punk. How's this all going to play out? I want to know what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, appreciate your feedback. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. How's it going to play out with the final boss, The Rock and Cody Rhodes on Saturday at the Elimination Chamber? Who is going to be the person that eventually turns? Who is going to be the corporate champion that perhaps takes this title away from Cody Rhodes? Will it happen at WrestleMania 41? Will it happen after that? Let me know your thoughts on all that. Appreciate you guys as always. And let me know your thoughts on what's going to happen with The Rock, Cody Rhodes, and who is going to be the person that sells their soul to the final boss.